So I was looking at my last video and it got a whole 1 view, which was by myself, but I've decided that if I'm supporting myself, it's enough. Circumcision, something many of you have gone through, and congratulations if it was your choice, and I'm sorry if it wasn't. Something you can say about pregnancy also, and just like pregnancy, if you've done this to your child, then honestly shame on you. Now, some of you may be offended hearing this, and if you are, honestly, you don't deserve that child. Otherwise, today, I'll convince you, prove, really just bring you to enlightenment of the massacre that is circumcision. Now, I wasn't always against circumcision, and I'm not purely against it as long as it is for pure medical reasons, such as the hood not retracting, or by a consenting adult that understands the risk, pains, healing, and etc. involved. Because, well, as a young adult myself, I have looked down at my Thunderbird and thought to myself, what would the appearance and performance of the bishop be if I took off his white pointy hood? And as a young impressionable lad, many of the reasons I sided with circumcision weren't the medical reasons. And not to hype it up too much, my consideration was for sexual appearance and performance. And the reason behind this is real simple, as, well, credible research shows that most women prefer the appearance of a circumcised penis, and there are some less reliable studies that claim it helps prolong the time until ejaculation, which, as a dude, is huge info. And, well, the whole bro science of, well, the part unprotected, sort of callousing the PP, meant big time opportunity and brain neuron activation. This, of course, can lead to dangerous practices like joking, which it just damages everything. Yeah, trying to like stretch max the todger, so terrible idea. Anyway, on this journey of enlightenment, I wanted to learn the history and reason behind circumcision, so I opened a wiki page, like any responsible adult would do. Anyway, let's go through it together and discover why I switched sides like Anakin Skywalker and shit on the dumb stuff done in the past. North Africa, 6000 BCE. The start of circumcision as rock hard art at this time shows nomadic tribes setting the ritual inspired by the name for the type of tribe they are, as they said, nomadic. And at a time, it's unclear if they clean themselves well. I would say all the power to them. Really just setting themselves free of all the crazy redheads they probably had. And I'm not talking about gingers. Anyway, later Egyptian depictions in 2300 BCE showed priests peeling the banana in a rite of passage. This one's more of like a religious thing, so I discredit it, but the first one, for the reasons of hygiene, is important, so at the time I would say good on them, but by today's hygiene standards it's unnecessary. Then circa, get it, like circumcision. Yeah, anyway, circa 1440 to 1400 BCE, I must assume at least, as this is when the Genesis was said to be written by historians, comes the Jewish people, as you probably all guessed, with a book written by Moses. And TLDR, basically this is like a super priest or something. Abraham is told by God to circumcise himself and fucking everyone he knows as an everlasting covenant, and I mean, really, why? If God gave the man a penis with foreskin, why does he suddenly want it back? Like, that's a bit weird. And personally, if my mum taught me anything in life, really, never drink, it's bad for you, and God isn't real. So honestly, dumb practice on unconsenting children. And if you're Jewish, I feel bad for you, not just because you are unconsensually circumcised at birth throughout history, but because of the other terrible things done to you throughout history. So, R.I.P. My condolences, bro. But not everyone went down with the Titanic, as some jumped ship before it set sail, such as Jewish philosopher Maimonides, who insisted that faith should be the only reason for circumcision, which makes sense, as sages at the time had recognized that the foreskin heightened sexual pleasure. Makes sense why they did it here, hence lust being one of the big 7 sins. Maybe Maimonides also knew of the harm that could come of it, and shout out to my boy Maimonides. W philosopher, we have the same philosophical mind. Then the next part of the history book says, Europeans, with the exception of Jews, did not practice circumcision, except for this one rare case in Visigothic Spain, where the armed campaign King Wamba ordered circumcision of everyone who committed atrocities against the civilian population as punishment to people, which makes sense as, well, it's like painful for like a month after, and it could result in deformities back in the day when they didn't have the proper medical treatment or procedures. Or so I've heard. Also, hi, I should probably mention myself am uncircumcised. Really bless the souls of my parents and circumcised dad, who stopped the cycle of massacre and pain, leaving the burden of circumcision on his shoulders alone. Also, randomly here, this reminds me of a joke I once heard from a coworker I think you would like to hear, so here we go. I saw this spider and I was like, OMG, it's a massive hairy and deformed spider. And she was like, yeah, but it's only 2 inches. And I was like, yeah, but it's a massive 2 inches, hairy and deformed. Smash like for W joke. And subscribe, please. Okay, back to the history books. So in this point in history we have the 18th century and some open disapproval for circumcision. Probably no, but the first but big and old enough for Wiki to talk about. What the fuck did I write in this script? Anyway. Wiki mentions this, it might not be the very first person that disapproves of it, but this dude, Edward Gibbon, I thought it was a Gibson. Edward Gibbon referred to circumcision as a singular mutilation practiced only by Jews and Turks, as a painful but often dangerous rite. Some other dude, who the fuck is that? Darby. So people did begin to see the procedure as not optimal, especially with the medical knowledge at those times. In 1753 in London, which, if you're saying I suddenly cut back in the time period because I said 18th century before, I'm pretty sure even though it begins with a 17, it's the 18th century, so screw you. 1753 in London, there was a proposal for Jewish emancipation. It was furiously opposed by the pamphleteers though, which, I don't know, they probably wrote the little pamphlet books or whatever the fuck at the time. They spread the theory that the Jewish emancipation meant universal circumcision. So, for those who don't know, emancipation, by the way, means an act of setting someone free from restraint, control, or power of another. And this shit is vague as hell and bleeds into dangerous territory, so no wonder the bookworms here opposed to this idea. At the time, men were urged to protect the best of your property and guard their threatened foreskins. It was an extraordinary outpouring of popular beliefs about sex, fears, and masculinity, and misconceptions about Jews. But also striking indication of how central to their sexual identity men considered their foreskins at that time. Which is like the fucking opposite now. Smash like. Now on the other perspective, people who were for circumcision, the main attraction, lead performance, was just the idea of medical benefits. But there was also a secondary minor opening act about the benefits of reducing masturbation. As Wiki states, widespread adoption of the practice as surgical procedure occurred under the growing belief in the Anglophone medical community of its efficacy in reducing the risk of contracting sexually transmitted diseases, such as syphilis. Sexually transmitted diseases were rampant in societies of this era and caused death prior to the advent of antibiotics in the 20th century. A second motivation was the belief circumcision could lessen sexual urges and reduce the ease of masturbation, referred to as self-pollution and self-abuse. Just like the political field where there's a left and a right, the statements about circumcision really swing over the years, such as a plea for circumcision in the British Medical Journal, 1890, where some dude contended that the foreskin, quote, constitutes a harbour for filth and is a constant source of irritation. It conduces to masturbation and adds to the difficulties of sexual continence. It increases the risk of syphilis in early life and of cancer in the aged, end quote. Dude also believed that it would stop masturbation, by the way. Quote, I am inclined to believe that circumcision may often accomplish much, both in breaking the habit of masturbation as an immediate result, and in diminishing the temptation to do it subsequently, end quote. And now for some of the stupid idiot medical malpractice people who developed some just buffoonish ideas throughout the years. These increasingly common medical beliefs were applied to females, except they decided it would be a good idea to absolutely mutilate these women by removing their clitoris, as in 1866, Baker Brown described the use of clitoridectomy, the removal of the clitoris, as a cure for several conditions, including epilepsy, catalepsy, and mania, which he attributed to masturbation. And that just doesn't even make a lick of sense. Like, yes, you could remove the glands of a man's penis and it would be less pleasurable for them, of course, but at that point the sexual organ is just a piss hole and destroys the sacred act of sex for mankind, or I guess womankind here. Most of the conditions that were mentioned are in the brain also, so, well, I don't know, man. I know people joke that men think with that head down there instead of the brain head, but don't remove the head, bruh. Just keep the clitoris on a woman's body. I'm so glad this is banned and illegal pretty much everywhere, but the fact that a law had to be made specifically for it is crazy. Like, why was it done in the first place? So common and not opposed to and frowned upon for so long. It's like the one law in the UK where it tells you can't give a lit cigarette to your cat and dog. Like, it should just be fucking common sense. Then our second idiot who did less atrocious things but still despicable, this dude William Stewart Housteds in 1885 discovered the use of hypodermic cocaine as a local anesthetic, which made it easy for doctors without expertise in the use of chloroform and other general anesthetics to perform minor surgeries, which is like fucking cocaine. That's the fucking drug. And chloroform I thought was a poison, but it puts the people to sleep, so I don't know, those both seem bad. What the fuck? Let me know in the comments, please. Also, up to this point in the wiki page, there's some fucking wild and funny stories. They're on par with like some of the craziest news titles today. For instance, this dude Louis Sayre, New York orthopedic surgeon, became a prominent advocate for circumcision in America because in 1870 he examined a 5-year-old boy who was unable to straighten his legs and whose condition had so far defied treatment. Upon noting that the boy's genitals were inflamed, Sayre hypothesized that chronic irritation of the boy's foreskin had paralyzed his knees via reflex neurosis. And this dude Sayre, I don't know how to say his name, Sayre or whatever, circumcised the boy, and in a few weeks he recovered from his fucking hell, he's fucking paralyzed my tongue. He recovered from his paralysis. After several additional incidents in which circumcision also appeared effective in treating paralyzed joints, Sayre began to promote circumcision as a powerful orthopedic remedy. Sayre's prominence within the medical profession allowed him to reach a wide audience. Alright, Chad might actually have dyslexia, I have no fucking idea. Anyway, now this guy, obviously huge influence for pro-circumcision, but there are many other reasons circumcision was practiced widespread across countries like America, the UK and Australia. Several hypotheses have been made. That's funny, like they had to come up with smart ideas about this shit. As to why public's acceptance of infant circumcisions as preventative medicine was so high. Basically, the number one reason is the germ theory, which made the wider public deeply suspicious of dirt and bodily secretions. Accordingly, the smegma that collects under the foreskin was viewed as unhealthy. What the fuck is smegma? Okay. And circumcision readily accepted as a good penile hygiene. Secondly, moral sentiment of the day regarded masturbation as not only sinful but also physically and mentally unhealthy, stimulating the foreskin to produce a host of maladies of which it was suspected. In this climate, circumcision could be employed as a means of discouraging masturbation. All About the Baby, a popular parenting book of the 1890s, recommended infant circumcision for precisely this purpose. However, a survey of 14,010 men in the United States in 1992, Lehman found that circumcised men were more likely to report masturbating at least once a month. I just did the complete opposite, lol. And then there is a small part about circumcision serving as a status symbol in the wiki page. As hospitals proliferated in urban areas, childbirth, at least among the upper and middle classes, was increasingly under the care of physicians in hospitals rather than with midwives in the home. It had been suggested that once a critical mass of infants were being circumcised in the hospital, circumcision became a class marker of those wealthy enough to afford a hospital birth. Okay, that's a W, like, imagine Elon Musk just flexing his circumcised penis these days. Like, what am I even saying? You know what yeah. Also, I'd like to throw in here that many people have told me before, World War II or one, I don't remember which one, was a big reason people were circumcised. And yes, I have talked about circumcision with friends, like a G. And as a subsequent Reddit thread tells me, during World War I, the military led a concerted effort to circumcise soldiers and sailors, because it was believed that this would make them less susceptible to venereal disease. I don't know what that venereal is, but yep. Military discipline forced men to submit a procedure they would never have agreed to had it left to their own decision. Thousands of men were circumcised in their late teens and early 20s. When these men returned home and became fathers, doctors began asking whether they wanted their newborn sons circumcised. Many remembering the pain that they or their buddies endured from the operation as adults, they said yes, thinking it would avoid having to do it later, when the pain was thought to be worse than in infancy. Most babies, however, continued to be born at home and were not circumcised. I don't know how reliable of a source this anecdote is, but it could be one of the reasons for circumcision being so popular, as one estimate of infant circumcision rates in the United States holds that 30% of newborn American boys were being circumcised at the beginning of the, is it 18th or 19th century? I don't know, 1900s. It began with 30%, and then during 1952 it rose to 55%, and then in the 1950s it went to 72%, which is around the time of wars, so it went up significantly there. So the World War forcing men to be circumcised could be a good reason for why it was so popular in America before the 21st century, where it began to go on a decline. But at the same time, the decline in circumcision in the English-speaking world began in the post-war period. Mainly, it was in UK because the British pediatrician Douglas Gardner published a famous study in 1949 titled "The Fate of the Foreskin," which was described as a model of perceptive and pungent writing. That's a play on words, that's pretty cool. It revealed that for the years 1942 to 1947, about 16 children per year in England and Wales had died because of circumcision, a rate of about 1 per 6,000 circumcisions. The article had an influential impact on medical practice and public opinion. Which is like, yeah, why the fuck is it killing people now if it's so good for hygiene and health? Which leads me to the healing process of circumcision, which I forgot to mention. First of all, it could cause infection, which is a big no-no. But then there is also the healing process. And for adults who are fully conscious, this seems like a torture, as the skin near the incision line has to have sutures around it. And when I was doing my research about the process of circumcision for adults, other than the fucking price of it, the second reason that really threw me off was this dude telling this story in a Reddit thread that it felt like his dick was shackled in some BDS device with sharp spikes constantly pushing into the head of his peen. And just imagining the fucking torture if you just so happen to fucking get a boner during this moment was one of the big reasons I would not undergo such a painful procedure on myself. And I'm no dickologist, but call me crazy if you think like you could just fucking run the convertible hoodless and get most of the benefits that are claimed from circumcision without actually removing the hood. You feel me? And yes, not to get too personal, this is the setup I run. There is no joking, no stretch maxing, just good old, what would you call it? Phantom circumcision. Maxing, or whatever the fucking hip Gen Z term would be. Yeah, I don't know how helpful it has been for really just trying to last longer, but it hasn't had any negative effects, so yeah, smash like, W. Anyway, back to the end of history. I don't know why they even call it history, like, can't it fucking have some of her story? Smash like, subscribe. If I get 2 likes on this, I'll make a video about female circumcision, I guess. Anyway, in the present times, less and less men are being circumcised, as one big reason being that in 1949, a lack of consensus in the medical community as to whether circumcision carried with it any notable health benefit motivated the United Kingdom's newly formed National Health Service to remove infant circumcision from its list of covered services. Since then, circumcision has been an out-of-pocket cost to parents, which honestly might be the true reason why I was never circumcised by my parents. Either way, good thing I'm not circumcised. W's smash like.
Where is your circumcision?
Don't need it. Bum, 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 bum.